Back to BNC Live. We got our panel. We're discussing the Virginia election. And Shane, I see you tweeting over there. Hopefully you're telling folks to tune in to BNC Live to check us all out. But with that being said,
I was just tweeting.
Good job. I'm going to retweet you. I'm going to hold you to that. So you wanted to comment on Paris's comment. We'll have you do that, and then we'll go to some sound.
Yeah, no, I just think that Paris was making a really stellar point on the fact that we need to really pay attention to what Republicans did here. There was a uniqueness about this particular election, and Youngkin really did not focus on Trump. He focused on the issues. I think that Republicans need to see this as a focal point, that when you are more inclusive as a party, that you can begin to resonate with more voters. And I think that this was a unique opportunity for Republicans to start shifting. And I think that's what I meant earlier when I said shifting that message, expanding inclusivity within the party and beginning to have those hard conversations. And I think that the Youngkin campaign did that.
All right, Shane, Paris, Amisha, let's listen to some sound.
This is a strong referendum on the Democratic Party. On the national level, I think it's definitely trickled down to Virginia politics. People's discontent and just frustration with the Democratic Party on the national level not being able to pass, and a lot of the things that were promised to black folk is definitely playing a role here in Virginia. And furthermore, I think there's been a lack of enthusiasm for this election, which is unfortunate. I think Terry McAuliffe is kind of feeling the byproduct of, again, the souring on the national level. And now this is an opportunity for the Democratic Party on the national level, definitely on the state level, to bring forth new leadership. Those millennials who people told, you need to wait your turn, it's not time enough, we need to be leading because we're on the ground, people listen to us, and we can drive turnout.
All right, Amisha, you want to respond to that sound we all heard?
I think that it was spot on. At the end of the day, Virginia is seen as a referendum. I do think we need to take into account that this was an off-season election time. We know that presidential elections bring out more Democratic voters, more diverse voters than the midterms do, and then these cycles pre-midterms do. But with that being said, Democrats ran in Virginia on a nationalized agenda, a nationalized policy platform, a nationalized all things against Trump. That doesn't work when Trump is no longer in office. Heck, again, he's no longer even on Twitter. So it's a very hard discussion to have. But beyond that, we've seen time and time again, Democrats want to see more from the current Biden administration. And I think that with all of the negative press that has come about, the bickering between moderates, progressives, and others in between, trying to get infrastructure passed, trying to make sure that the Build Back Better plan doesn't get raked down to the bones. Right now, Democratic voters, specifically black people, want to see the things that Joe Biden actually ran on come to fruition. And I think that it's been elevated by media so much. We saw the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act die on the vine. We have not seen some of the inclusionary things, specifically around reforms for education, reforms that would have allowed for more funding for some of our school districts, things like that, things like paid family leave. There's just a large frustration around the fact that there were some speeches made that got black people to the polls in November in droves, and at the end of the day, now a lot of voters are seeing themselves come up empty-handed. And I think that is definitely one of the things that we saw in Virginia.
Yeah, we know that they're supposed to be taking up the John Lewis Voting Rights Act today. We'll just have to see where that goes. But Paris, this question's for you. Preliminary numbers show about 6,000 more people cast ballots in the lieutenant governor's race, where we had two women of color. They were the primary contenders rather than two white men. What does that say to you about the direction the Commonwealth is moving in?
I think it's a great direction. It says that you can be a conservative black Republican, former Marine who loves this country, Jamaican born, and come here and win an election. It tells you that people are not looking at race as a factor that will disqualify you from being in office. We are living up to what Dr. King talked about, being judged by the content of your character and not only by the color of your skin. And so it shows that you can be a competitive candidate as a person of color, whether you're a Democrat or you're a conservative Republican. And that's a very good thing.
All right, Shane, this question's for you. Glenn Youngkin, I know we discussed earlier, basically staying away from Trumpism as a rule book. But Glenn Youngkin, folks are saying he did this really well. He had his cake, he also ate it too. Endorsed by Trump while also staying clear of any actual contact with the former president. Do you expect more Republicans to follow this playbook as we move into midterms next year?
Well, they will, because I think the country's better without the former president, period. And that's not a Republican Party, my statement. It's a referendum on, it's the truth. The party, both parties, the country as a whole is better without Trump and Trumpism. And I hope that Republicans will begin to focus on the issues, veer away from the former president because he's selfish, because he's about himself, because he's in his own self-aggrandizement, and focus on the issues that matter in their region. And I think that if Republicans begin to do that, they will leave Democrats with not a lot to be able to focus on in regard to Trump per se. They'll take the cake right out of the Democrats' mouth, and Democrats will have to focus on the issues as well. And I think if Republicans take on the issues and create a more inclusive party, they will be able to resonate with more voters, and Democrats will have to focus on the issues and battling them on the issues, just like it was before Trump was ever president. So I think ultimately that's where we need to go back, focused on the issues, focused on debating the issues, and not focused on debating Trump.
All right, final word. Are we, the media, making too much of all of this? I mean, after all, it seems to follow a pattern of the last several elections, presidential administrations. When a Republican is elected to the White House, a Democrat moves into the governor's mansion following November. So why is this causing such a hoopla? Amisha, we'll go to you.
Well, I think because in large part, there was a repudiation across Virginia for former President Trump. So I think that the push was that we were going to see things change. And remember that the winds of change were behind McAuliffe for quite some time. It was just within the past few weeks that Glenn Youngkin really saw these upward ticks in terms of individuals coming out and really showcasing that they were going to back him and that there was a strong arm in that. But I think that largely we're seeing in America where there's a galvanization around kitchen table issues. And I don't think that Democrats, by and large, have done a really good job of communicating those. It seems like we're always on the defense these days. That's not really working. And again, you can't use the ghost of Trump in every race. It's just not going to work. Voters know he's no longer in office. Voters want to see what Democrats are going to do.
All right, Paris, we'll go to you next.
I think at the end of the day, we have to remember that President Trump did do some great things for this country, and specifically the black community. When you talk about bipartisan criminal justice reform, that was President Trump. When you talk about supporting HBCUs to the point of having permanent funding for them, that was President Trump. When you want to talk about opportunity zones and having the lowest black unemployment in history, that was President Trump. And so he did expand our party. He did bring more black Americans to our party, more Hispanic Americans to our party, and that's a good thing. What was on the ballot today were policies that worked, policies that empower, policies that uplift. And it was a repudiation, not of Donald Trump. This was a repudiation of failed Democrat policies that aren't working. And people of Virginia looked at what was happening nationally when you saw them bring in all those national Democrats, and they said, you all aren't doing anything to help empower my life. You can't pass anything in terms of police reform. You can't even, you're more focused on climate change than you are on HBCUs. It's a shame that HBCU funding that was even talked about not being fully funded in one of their bills when you have the vice president as an HBCU grad and so many people in Congress as HBCU grads as well. The Democrats are in disarray. The Virginia voters on both sides of the aisle looked at that and said, we don't want it. And the Republican Party seized the opportunity to connect directly with voters, especially those in the minority communities, and said, we're here, we're listening, and we will respond, and we will give you policies that will empower and uplift you, just like President Trump did. That is a good thing for our party. That's a good thing for the country.
All right, that's our time. Thank you all for joining us. It was a pleasure having you.